There comes a moment when everything becomes quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels peaceful or comforting, but a heavy, unfamiliar silence that settles deep inside the chest. It is the kind of silence that follows when all the noise has already taken everything it could, when there is nothing left to argue with, nothing left to hold on to. He did not notice when it began. Perhaps it started slowly, with small disappointments that were easy to ignore. Or maybe it came all at once, like a door closing without warning. But now, standing at the lowest point of his journey, he could feel it clearly, that stillness surrounding him. There were no voices cheering, no reassuring words, only the echo of what once was, fading further away with each passing moment. And in that silence, something uncomfortable began to rise. Questions, soft at first, almost like whispers. How did it come to this? Was there something he missed? Could he have done something differently? He did not speak these questions aloud. There was no need. They lived quietly within him, repeating themselves in the empty space where certainty once existed. It is strange, isn't it? How silence can reveal what noise once hid. When everything is loud, we rarely listen. We react. We respond. We move quickly from one moment to the next. But when all of that disappears, when there is nothing left to distract the mind, the truth begins to surface. And the truth is not always easy to face. He felt the weight of it, pressing gently but persistently, not as punishment, but as something that refused to be ignored any longer. There was a time when he would have resisted this feeling, tried to escape it, filled the silence with anything that could make it go away. But now there was nowhere to run, so he remained still, not because he knew what to do, but because he had no strength left to pretend. And in that stillness, he began to notice something else. The absence of anger. The absence of blame. It was not that these feelings had never existed. They had. But here, at this quiet bottom, they seemed distant, as if they no longer had the power they once did. What remained was something simpler, a quiet awareness. He could see his own thoughts more clearly now, like reflections on still water, no longer distorted by movement or noise, just there, waiting to be understood. And yet, understanding did not come immediately. There were long pauses, moments where nothing seemed to make sense. Moments where the silence felt almost too heavy to carry. But even then, he did not break it. Why? Perhaps because, deep down, he knew that this silence was not his enemy. Perhaps it was the only place left where something real could begin. It did not promise comfort. It did not offer answers right away. But it asked something simple in return: patience, to sit with what is, to feel without rushing to change it, to listen even when there is nothing to hear. And so, he stayed there, not defeated, not yet rising, but present, breathing slowly, noticing the quiet rhythm of his own existence. For the first time in a long while, he was not trying to prove anything, not trying to fix everything, all at once, just being, in that silent space between what was lost and what had not yet been found. And maybe that is where every true journey begins. Not in noise, not in action, but in a silence so deep it gently asks you to meet yourself there. There were moments in that quiet when the world outside seemed to move on without him, as if nothing had happened, as if his fall had gone unnoticed. Or perhaps it had been noticed, but not understood. They continued speaking, their voices carried across the distance, filled with certainty. They had their own versions of the story, their own quiet conclusions. And somehow, in all of it, he was no longer seen as he once was. It is a strange feeling to be surrounded by words, yet feel so unseen. He could sense it, even without hearing every detail. The way their tone shifted, the way their presence felt different now. There was a distance that had not been there before, a subtle separation that grew wider with time, and within him something stirred, a familiar urge to explain, to correct what had been misunderstood, to defend what they could not see. It rose gently at first, like a thought passing through, but soon it became stronger, more persistent. Why should he remain silent when they were speaking so freely? Why should he carry the weight of their assumptions without saying a word? The questions came, one after another, each one pulling him closer to a reaction. He could feel it in his chest, that tension building, the desire to be heard, to reclaim something that felt taken. Even if only in perception, it would have been easy. Just a few words, just a simple response. And yet, he paused. There was something about this moment that felt familiar. Not in detail, but in pattern. As if he had stood here before, at the edge of reaction, ready to step forward without thinking. And where had that led him? The thought did not accuse. It did not shame. It simply reminded. So he stayed still, not because it was easy, but because something within him was watching more carefully now. He began to notice the space between what he felt and what he chose to do. A small space, but enough. Enough to breathe. Enough to question. Enough to see that not every feeling needed to become an action. They continued, unaware of the quiet shift taking place within him. Their words moved freely, unchallenged. Perhaps they expected a response. Perhaps they were waiting for it, but none came. And in that absence, something unexpected happened. The noise began to lose its hold. What once felt urgent began to soften. What once demanded attention slowly faded into the background. It was still there, but it no longer controlled him. He realized then that being misunderstood carries a certain kind of loneliness. A quiet isolation that cannot be explained easily. It lingers in the spaces between conversations, in the moments where you choose not to speak. But within that loneliness, there is also a choice to chase every misunderstanding, or to let some of them pass, to hold tightly to how others see you, or to gently release that weight. He did not arrive at this understanding all at once. It came slowly, like light returning at dawn. subtle, almost unnoticed at first. And with it came a different kind of strength. Not loud, not visible, but steady. The kind of strength that does not rush to be seen because it no longer depends on being understood by everyone. He still felt the pull from time to time. That quiet voice saying, "Say something, make it clear." But now, there was another voice as well, quieter, calmer, asking something different. Is it necessary? Will it change anything, or only disturb what you are beginning to find? And in that question, he found his answer, not in words, but in silence. A silence that was no longer empty, but chosen. At first, it did not feel like strength. It felt like holding something back, like standing still when every part of him wanted to move. The urge to respond did not disappear. It remained, quietly waiting, testing him in small, persistent ways. A look, a word, a memory. Any of these could stir it again. And each time he noticed it more clearly, not as something to fear, but as something to understand. Why did it matter so much to be heard? Why did the need to explain feel so heavy? He did not rush to answer these questions. He simply let them sit with him the way the silence had taught him to do. And slowly, something began to unfold. He saw that reacting had never really given him what he was searching for. Even when he spoke, even when he tried to make things clear, the feeling did not last. There was always another moment, another misunderstanding, another reason to speak again. It was endless. Like trying to quiet a storm by shouting into it. But this was different. In choosing not to react, he was not losing anything real. He was only letting go of the need to control what could not be controlled. And that realization, it softened something inside him. The tension that once filled his chest began to ease. The urgency faded. In its place came a steady, quiet awareness, like a deep breath, that no longer needed to be forced. He started to notice the difference between impulse and intention. Impulse was quick, restless, always seeking an outlet. But intention was calm. It waited. It chose. And for the first time, he felt that he had a choice. Not every word spoken to him required an answer. Not every opinion needed to be corrected. Not every moment of discomfort needed to be escaped. There was a quiet power in simply observing, in allowing things to pass without holding on to them. It did not make the world silent, but it made him still within it. And that stillness, it began to feel like something valuable, something worth protecting. He realized that his silence was not an absence. It was a boundary, a space where he could remain untouched by the constant movement around him. A place where his self-respect could quietly grow, without needing approval, without needing to be seen. There was a certain dignity in it, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that demands attention, but the Kai in that exists quietly, whether anyone notices or not. And as he continued to choose this path, moment by moment, something deeper began to settle within him. He no longer felt pulled in every direction. The voices around him, once so loud, now seemed distant, not because they had changed, but because he had. He was no longer reacting to every shift, every word, every assumption. He was steady. It was not perfection. There were still moments of hesitation, moments where the old habits tried to return, but now he could see them for what they were, passing waves, not permanent truths, and he did not follow them. Instead, he remained where he was, grounded in that quiet awareness. It is a subtle transformation, one that cannot be easily explained from the outside. To others, it may look like nothing has changed. They may still speak, still assume, still misunderstand. But within him, everything is different. Because now, his silence is not forced, it is chosen. And in that choice, there is a kind of strength that does not need to prove itself. A strength that simply exists, calm and unwavering beneath the surface. There was no sudden turning point, no moment where everything changed at once. It happened quietly, almost unnoticed, like the slow passing of night into morning. He continued as he was, moving through his days without announcing anything to the world. There were no explanations offered, no need to revisit what had already been left behind. The silence he carried was no longer heavy. It had softened, settled into something steady. And within that quiet, a new rhythm began to form. He no longer rushed to respond to what did not require his energy. He no longer felt the same pull toward proving himself. The need to be seen, to be understood by everyone, had gently loosened its grip, not because the world had changed, but because he had stopped asking it to. There is a certain peace that comes when you no longer argue with what is end, when you allow others to hold their own thoughts, and you remain with your own truth, quietly, without resistance. He began to see how much of his past weight had come from trying to carry things that were never his to hold. The opinions, the assumptions, the constant movement of other people's minds. None of it truly belonged to him, and yet he had carried it as if it did. Now, he set it down, not with force, not with rejection, but with understanding. It was never his. That simple realization created space within him, a space that had once been filled with noise, now open and still. And in that stillness, something gentle appeared. Not excitement, not pride, but a quiet sense of ease, the kind that does not demand attention, the kind that does not come and go. It simply remains. He found himself moving differently, not outwardly, but inwardly. His thoughts were no longer rushed. His feelings no longer needed immediate answers. There was patience now, a willingness to let things unfold without interference. Even when they spoke, even when they continued, as they always had, it no longer reached him in the same way. There was distance, but not the kind that creates coldness. It was a calm distance, a respectful space between what was his and what was not. And in that space, he felt free. Not the kind of freedom that comes from escape, but the kind that comes from escape, but the kind that comes from understanding, from knowing that he does not have to react to every moment, that he does not have to carry every voice, that he does not have to explain himself to be at peace. It is a quiet freedom, easy to miss, easy to overlook. But once felt, it cannot be easily forgotten. He did not look back with regret. There was no need. Everything that had brought him here, every moment of silence, every unanswered word, had shaped this quiet strength within him. And now there was nothing left to prove, nothing left to defend, only a steady presence, grounded and at ease. If someone were to look at him now, they might not see anything remarkable. They might not notice the stillness, the restraint, the quiet clarity that lives beneath the surface. But that is the nature of this kind of strength. It does not announce itself. It does not seek recognition. It simply exists quietly, fully, without disturbance. And in that quiet existence, he continues forward, not louder, not faster, but lighter. As if somewhere along the way, without anyone noticing, he had finally come home to himself.